Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Moy Style podcast. Today we have Adrian with 212 athlete. He's based out of Arizona, and this guy's the man when it comes to increasing velocity, throwing velocity, but at the same time being able to keep the kids healthy because we don't want to risk injuries just because we're trying to increase velocity. And I know Adrian is an expert when it comes to this. I've had a couple of kids that I work with that actually flew to Arizona to work with him, and they're pretty amazed by the results. So, Adrian, I really appreciate you for being on, man. How about
Yeah,
we get started with you, kind of introducing yourself, just in case people don't know you yet, and then we'll jump in with a question.
yeah. So obviously, my name's Adrian Gomez, but I played at University of Washington and I played at Arizona State. Kind of a weird, long career, and fortunate to play at really good universities. I had amazing coaches. Team USA. Really, really high quality coaches that I was coached by, and learned a lot of the techniques that I have. Obviously, I've learned a lot, doing what I do over the past 12 years, but I definitely want to give tribute to the great coaches that have coached me. And so, yeah, we've been in this pursuit about almost 12 years now, and we've helped a lot of people. We've done a lot of rehab. We've done a lot of improvements. There's a lot of kids who are stuck on that fence that they're really not going to get recruited. We're able to help them increase their velocity, keep them healthy, and then they've had really great strong college careers, and two of which are now coming back and working for me. So what's crazy is you train a kid from 15,
Yeah,
they do their whole career, and then they come back and work for you. So and they're still healthy, and so that's kind of really what it's all about is keeping everyone healthy, having long careers, and having fun doing it.
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and jump in with the questions here. So because obviously everybody wants to throw harder. I don't care if you're a possession player, if you're a pitcher. Everybody wants to throw harder. But a lot of times, like me personally, when I play, I didn't even know how to take care of my arm, and I had a lot of arm issues, injuries, and so where do we start? Like, do we start with the bands? Do we start with mechanics? Do we start in the weight room? So where does a kid need to be starting?
Yeah, so I think at a youth level, I think it's bands. I'm noticing a lot of I think it's a little bit of everything that you touched on. I
Hmm.
think it's number one, kids are weak. Number two, I don't mean that in a mean sense. It's
Right,
just
right.
you ask them to do 5 push-ups and it's hard for them to do that, and you're like, okay. And when I travel down to the Dominican Republic, the one thing that they talk about is in shape, being in shape. And they say, I can't train you unless you're in shape.
Right.
And so, that's something that we used to do as Americans, as American baseball players and coaches. I remember the beginning of the season, and it was all conditioning and it was horrible. But that transitioned into us being healthy. And so what the Dominicans and Latin Americans are doing is they're doing what we used to do. And they would start with the physical, and they would get us strong, and then we move into the technique. And so a lot of times we move into technique without getting in shape. So I would say that start getting in shape. There's kids who can't run a mile, not even for time. I'm talking like a mile, like
Hmm.
just run a mile. I used to run about 1 to 2 miles after every game that I pitched. So my legs were in shape. I didn't do that for my arm. I did that for my legs. So I threw a lot of complete games in high school, and in college. And so I attribute that to my being in shape. And then number two, start with the bands. We use crossover symmetry. I really like them. It's a really high quality. I've used them for 17 years. But J bands do a good job too. So I would just say use a band system, and get in the routine. So it's like almost like brushing your teeth.
Hmm.
You have to do it daily, and if you don't, that function, that health really drops off quickly.
Right.
So
And since you mentioned that, I'm glad you mentioned the running after you pitch, because I hear both sides of it. So like they say you don't need to run long distance, and some say you need to run more sprints. I mean, which one would you choose? What do you recommend?
Well, I did a little bit of both. There was obviously sprinting, you're throwing. So it's like a sprint, but it's also you're throwing 150 pitches, so it's a marathon. So
Mm-hmm.
you need a little bit of both. There's a lot of gray area. you know
Mm-hmm.
People
Right.
want a black and white picture, and so you're training. There's 300 pitches thrown in a Major League Baseball game or a 9 inning game, 150 for one team, 150 for the other. So my job is to make sure that my pitchers are being trained to throw 150 pitches. Now, do I want them to throw 150 pitches? No, because
Mm-hmm.
that's a crappy game.
Right.
But they need to be able to be trained so that they're comfortable in doing that. And I think a lot of kids, they throw a 20 pitch bullpen or they play long toss to 90 feet and they wonder why their arm's tired.
Right. That's a good point. Now when it comes to bands, I know you mentioned the band, so um, which I use that now, and honestly, I learned that from you, and then Justin. I know you did a camp in OKC Academy in Oklahoma
Yeah, yeah,
City.
yeah.
Yeah, so he picked up some great stuff from you, and obviously I picked up some stuff from him too. So that's what
Cool.
I do now with my boys. But what age do you recommend starting those bands at?
So, I would say the youngest, I have a 7U team for my son. And so we are implementing the bands. I wouldn't say we do it religiously,
Right.
but I introduce them to it and they're like, wow, this is really weird. They have no control over their body. So,
Right.
but just introduce things, little things, just like fielding, right? You would introduce how to field a ground ball to a 7-year-old. Obviously, it wouldn't be perfect, but
Hmm.
it's going to be, the process. So I would just little introductions as they get young, and then build them into routine. Probably by 9, they should be pretty proficient in their band system. You need to walk them through every step, make sure that they're doing it right, and that they, because they need supervision. I think
Hmm.
a lot of people are like, you just go do your bands,
Right.
and I really watch my kids on how they do it because a lot of times they do it wrong. So
Right. Yeah, and I think part of it's because of lack of strength, and I see them try to use the lower back a lot just to
yeah,
try to get it back, and so yeah, that's a good point.
big time.
Um, and that now that you say that, so like, do you think it's gonna hurt them just doing it every day, or should they take a break? What do you
So
recommend?
I would recommend bands every day. It's I think of it a lot like brushing your teeth. An elbow surgery is about 61,000. I think if you have insurance, it's like 5 or 4, depending on your insurance. But very expensive, very painful, very horrible recovery. Labrums, rotator cuffs. Labrums are worse than a rotator cuff. Rotator cuff, they're still, those surgeries aren't cheap and they
Right.
hurt, and hard recovery. So anything that you can do daily to prevent these injuries, I'm seeing, just to get into the throwing aspect, like most kids are really weak going internally. So when you throw a baseball, that internal motion is actually what's reducing their power. A lot of kids, when they do the bands, are very good external rotators, so they're very strong and proficient, but we're not getting as good of internal rotation. So that's extra work that you could be doing on your pec, your biceps, all of your accelerators on the front side of your body. So that's why push-ups, I think I keep challenging my kids to do 50 push-ups a day. And they're like, this is hard. I'm like, well, yeah, it is, but
Right.
the side of your body is key into accelerating into the ball. So
Hmm. So, and that was gonna be my next question. So, like, what really increases velocity?
a lot of times I see, you have increases in velocity because of mechanics. You'll have, maybe the elbow path, the elbow's not at the shoulder level, or the sequencing, like the timing of everything, a lot like hitting or even
Mm-hmm.
field too. It's like it's all about timing, your footwork and placement. So timing plays a huge role. Mechanics play a huge role. Command or your strength plays a key role. Flexibility plays a key role. There's some kids that struggle to get into their front side, into their front leg, and I tell them to, hey, can you touch your toes? And they can't.
Right.
so so
Right.
there it is a combination. But what I will say is, you know, a lot of issues happen at the end of the throw, and so what we do is we work on the end and then we work back to the beginning. So it was in this, it was the Soviet Union, back in Russia. They
Mm-hmm.
did, there's some good things that they did. Now, did they cheat in some of the Olympics? Yes, but they did some good training, and the training was, it was backwards training. So they would start at the end of, like, finishing a race, how to finish through the ribbon, right? So, like, how to finish through it. Then they would
Mm-hmm.
work the a little bit further back, all the way back to the blocks. Now, most of our training starts at the beginning, but we don't work at the end. That's why I think, like, when you do all your work with your hands, like, that's the finish. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of work your way backwards to the beginning. And so you're helping the kids sequence all of those things together. And I think you do a great job of that. I
Yeah.
see all your videos, I've seen everything. And so I really enjoy that process, because the kids, we always want them to start at the beginning, like pitching, but
Mm-hmm.
then everything breaks down at the end. So you really have to do a good job of finishing first, finishing the end, and then working back to the beginning. So
That's a great point. That's a great example too, how you put it there. Like I never thought of it that way, because I have a lot, especially the younger ones, and that's what I was going to ask you. So like, I mean, I see it all the time because people are like, well, kids don't need to learn how to throw because they know how to throw. I'm like, yeah, well, you need to work with kids and
yeah,
see what kids go through.
watch them throw.
Yeah. So like a lot of them when they throw, like they lead a lot with the elbow. So what do you think causes that to happen?
So we just had a, and this goes for softball and baseball too. So
Mm-hmm.
I have a softball player yesterday. She is a really hard worker. She's a Division I athlete, and she leads elbow, and so um, she's really weak in her shoulder. So her scapular, her shoulder, shoulder blade's not strong enough to load and stay loaded. So that, number one, is a strength issue. We started there. And then number two, the front glove is actually really important for sequencing. So if you ever see a quarterback drop back, their front glove, their front arm is up, because
Mm-hmm.
that's their timing mechanism, and then it also helps them rotate their body. So if you look at tennis players, if you look at volleyball players, if you look at any overhand athlete, their front arm is up, and it's being used to sequence the rotation. So I see that partially a front glove issue,
Mm-hmm.
issue, and then just mechanical on that side. So sometimes I use some weighted balls to throw. Now, it's done in a drill, it's done in the proper way, it's used as
Right.
a tool. That helps them a lot. So I'll put a front, like a 2 pound ball in their front glove, so that when they're throwing, they can feel it either drop or go where it needs to be.
I
So
got you. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good one there. I'm gonna actually start trying that. Well, now that you mentioned weighted balls, so like, do you? So I don't know because I see so many things nowadays, but I'm not saying that everything is wrong. I'm not saying that everything is right,
yeah,
but I do see a lot of people throwing a lot of weighted balls. So like,
yeah.
what's your thought on that?
So I use it as a tool,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of people buy into the, like a drive line program or the Mark Ball program or whatever's out. I mean, it's whatever's trending, right?
Right.
And they don't consult a professional, right? They download a PDF, and they just start throwing as hard as they can and try. So I'm not gonna lie, dude. I've seen a lot of injuries from driveline. I've had a few guys start with me. We had them go. I had one kid went from 72 miles an hour up to 86 miles an hour, And then he's like, hey, I'm going to go to Driveline. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, you know, whatever you got to do. Right. You know, I helped him as much as I could, which, I mean, that's 14-mile-an-hour improvement in a year. That's pretty good. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy. He went from not being on the radar to go to college, and then went to college. And so ended up, you know, using all the weighted balls. I looked at some of his throwing from Driveline, and ended up just mechanically not trying to throw the ball mechanically correct,
Mm-hmm.
and just trying to throw the ball hard. And so ended up getting hurt. And so I just, you have to be supervised by a professional. You just do. And
Right.
that's invaluable. So a lot of people talk about, you know, prices or whatnot. Well, you know, there are discounts, but sometimes you pay for it in other ways where you do get injured. And so that's what you and I do, right? I mean,
Right.
we are the professionals. We help guide and try to reduce, you know, the injuries as much as possible. So
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it kind of makes me nervous. I see it all the time, and I'm like, well, maybe I'm missing something. But I see
no,
some crazy stuff. I see what you do, and it, to me, it makes a lot of sense. And
yep.
I've tried it myself, and it's pretty awesome. But me throwing a weighted ball, you know, trying to go 100%, it's kind of
No,
crazy. But
I literally don't. I've actually changed my tune on that during the middle of the pandemic.
hmm
I, you know, everything was shut down, right? And so all I had was baseballs, and I used to make weighted baseballs, and I made them in China, and I sold them on Amazon, and I couldn't get the weighted balls. And so I didn't have any. So I had to use baseballs. And so I had to get creative. I had to look for mechanical flaws. And so I spent that pandemic just doing private lessons at parks, because everything was closed and I
right,
couldn't use my facility and I couldn't use anything. And people wanted training. So I was like, you know, I feel comfortable. As long as you feel comfortable, we're good.
yeah,
And so I used those baseballs, and it, I still had huge improvements. So I knew, like, okay, it's number one, it's probably mechanical. And number
hmm
two, you know, it's strength. We focused on strength and all those other things. So there was a lot of good that came out of, you know, adversity. So it
right,
was good.
right. Now, so what do you? Are you a big believer of long toss or not really? Because again, I hear both sides of it, and then people say, well, if you do a long toss, you may mess up your mechanics depending how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the people, they say that put a lot of stress in your arm. And if you do recommend long toss, how often should they long toss?
Yeah. So a little bit of both. I did a lot of long toss myself. When I was in high school and in college, I played with Tim Lincecum. I don't know if you remember him. Long hair,
San Francisco.
100
Yeah.
miles an hour. Yep.
hmm
Amazing guy. So he would throw foul pole to foul pole, probably 340 feet, 350 feet, just on a. It was stupid. So
Yeah.
you know, it does work. It does help. Now, are the mechanics, can they get screwed up if you don't have the strength? Yeah, it can. And so I would say high intensity throwing. I would throw with intent. So what's great about long toss is you don't need a radar gun, which is,
hmm
you can see a visual is like, okay, the output was 80 yards. Okay, that's how hard I threw. I threw 80 yards and it got there. If I have a radar gun, I'm going to give you an output too. So an output is you threw 65 miles an hour. Okay, so that was almost to my max. Okay, and I know that I'm tired. I knew that I almost got to my maximum velocity. So it's just the output. Um, I think a lot of kids don't throw hard enough. And so when they're forced to throw in a game or they're forced to throw in a tryout, that's when they get hurt, because they're not used to throwing hard enough for a longer period of time. So that's where I think long toss is not a cure all, but it can help. It's a positive. Or you can play catch from 90 feet and throw it hard and test the velocity and see where it's at. Because now a lot of the showcases, they're testing, all the infielders, all the outfielders, catchers, everything is being tested now. And so it's like, well, I'll just take the hardest thrower.
Right. Right.
you
But
know,
but do you recommend doing it every day, or should they do it every other day? How would you break that down?
I'd probably do 48 hours. 48 hours
I got you.
is a pretty good number for most hard throws. Now, if you, like with the camps that I do, if you do all of the arm care, the massage, the weighted balls, all of the stuff that we do to keep our kids healthy, you could probably throw multiple days in a row, and that's what we do at our camps. But we take almost 45 to an hour just to get them warmed up, to get them massaged, all of the sore spots that we're massaging with what I train them how to do it with the balls on the wall, or they do a softball or a lacrosse ball. And I teach them how to take care of their arms, and we usually get really good output, and they're tired. So, you just have to really take care of yourself. And so I think it's a good point, because a lot of people will just say, I'm going to rest. Through a lot, so I'm going to rest. Well, playing catch the next day actually might be better than rest. Where you come out and just nice light toss, and it's going to move the blood around, and it's going to be able to recover just a little bit better than just doing nothing.
Right. That's a good point, because like you said, a lot of people just rest. So, but you gotta keep the arm going a little bit too.
Right.
And that's why I say that, because honestly, again, back when I was playing, that was a long time ago. But when I really increased my velocity, maybe I'm assuming that's what it was, because I did a lot of long toss that year, and it helped me out quite a bit. The only thing is that I didn't have the support, so like I didn't have the band. So that's when I eventually kind of messed me up, because I didn't have the strength. So I think that's where, like, the stuff that you do, I think it's amazing, because it keeps the kids strong all year round. And that's to me, that's key. Now, when it comes to I know off camera we talked about a little bit about kids getting ready for tryouts, and well, really sometimes they don't even get ready for tryouts. They just go out to the tryouts and they try to throw as hard as they can. So how can they prepare themselves before they go to a tryout?
Yeah. So here in Arizona, it's probably like that. Across the country, anything in the South, kids play year round. When I say play, I mean tournaments year round. And so there's no time for them to switch into training mode. And so if you look at any Batman movie, if you look at any Bond movie, it's preparation, right? He gets ready, he does his work, he works on his pistol skills, his shooting skills. There's like a preparation for a war, right? So whether we're in combat or whether we're in sports, sports are it's like combat, right? It's really what we're doing. Instead of getting into wars, we're competing in a sport so that we don't have to fight. And so I want to prepare for a war. And so a lot of people are just in war, and there's no preparation. They run out of supplies. They don't have enough food. They don't have any equipment. So there was no forethought to a baseball season like a war. And so what we need to do is set apart 2 months prior to a tryout, where I get in once or twice a week with a professional, and I get a process going, and then I run that process. So now, and a lot of times there's kids who come, they have really good mechanics, they look awesome, all they need is reps. So I recommend doing certain things, and they don't come and see me as often, which is fine. I'm totally okay with that. Now there's some kids who need that every week, so I recommend, hey, I recommend you coming every week so we can get this right. And so I think they're not doing that enough before the season, and they're just completely unprepared, and then they get injured. So there's a lot of things happening right now in the bones. So there's those growth plates in the back of the elbow. Those are starting to flare up, especially at 11, 12 years old. They're growing. And so what I would recommend is if that kind of comes up, that you should stop playing actual competitions and you could train. And
Hmm.
I think that's something that we don't do as well in the United States as in other countries, because we're just chasing that weekend.
Yeah, I love that you said that because I'm a big believer in training, and I've said it before on the podcast. I've said it every time I
Yeah.
interview somebody. But that I'm glad you said that. But let me. I don't want to jump subjects here. But
Yeah.
so what do you think is the difference between now that you've been going to the Dominican Republic and here in the U.S. when it comes to the training? Like,
I
what do you
think
think is different?
I think they do play. They do play a lot.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. Like they're playing tournaments. There's probably 150 academies in the Dominican, and they all play each other. And there's great leagues. I've watched a lot of games down there. I really like it. But the preparation, they're practicing and training 4 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what people don't understand is, these major leaguers are, wow, they're making so much money, blah blah blah, but they show up 5-6 hours early to the
Right.
game. They work out for 4 hours, and then they play for 3 hours. So that's an 8-hour day of physical work, and they do that 162 games a year. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's a lot of output. And so what the Dominicans are doing really well is they're putting their kids in almost like a major league training. And so it's such an easier transition for those kids to move up. The United States, yes, we go to school, yes, we do all that, and I think that's good for them. I think it's good for them to go to school because they understand how long things take, right? But
Mm-hmm.
we're missing out on that training, and instead of training, we just play games.
Right.
Um,
And I tell people like one thing that I got real good at was my defense, and I didn't get good at it just by playing every single weekend and not training at all. Like I remember I took about a year and a half or close to two just training. Like I mean I did play a little bit, but I trained so much, and I think that's I wish they would cut back a little bit on this weekend tournaments where you play 1,000 games,
yeah,
and so like and then the kids get pretty burnout. So
I
um,
totally agree.
yeah. Now, when it comes to season, so let's talk about like position players here. And I promise I won't keep you up here long. I know you got stuff to
Good.
do, and but when it comes to position players, so obviously they don't have to go and pitch 100 whatever many pitches of the mound. So how often should they be throwing? Should it be the same as the pitchers, or should they continue to do more long toss or more 90 feet, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, so for position players, I'd recommend the bands every day. At Arizona State, we had such good success with the bands and the weighted balls that the whole team ran through the bands, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it was cool to see all the catchers in there. All of us were working together to take care of our arms. So that helped a lot. And then, we would play catch every day. And what I would focus on is pick, three or four, um, what is it called? Just mechanical drills to do in the throwing process. I think a lot of times when people go out and play catch, they just play catch to play catch.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's things that we can work on. We work on the back leg. We can work on how the front leg is setting up and the chest going over. We could work on the front glove. We could work on getting into the shoulder blade. So there's certain things that you need to work on each day. There's also different positionings. So as you come across the diamond and you're throwing across with a lower chest, you need to practice all of those throwing positions. And so just get your body in that position, all those different positions to throw. Because as an infielder, I mean, you got to throw from everywhere,
Right.
from a jump, from a backhand, from a forehand, from 1 foot, 2 feet. I mean, it's incredible the throws that infielders make, and it's just the versatility of the arm, of where it needs to go and where it needs to be. And the only way to get good at that is by doing it in all of those different aspects. So when I train infielders for throwing, we have to throw from all of those different positions, from our knees, from one knee, from two knees. You know what I mean? So from sitting, because there's a lot of times where you'll bobble that ball or backhand, you're sitting on your
Right.
butt. I watched a couple plays yesterday where I can't remember who it was. Third baseman threw it from his butt and got him out at first base. So,
Yeah.
that's a valuable throw. And so I would practice that every day and do something new every day, because it gets boring,
Right. Right.
and it's okay to bring in something new. Today I'm going to do one-legged throws from across the diamond, like a third baseman across the diamond, short hop. Pick something, try to make it fun for yourself. And that's where, like, you come in. These professionals that we need to be with, they can show you how to make it fun, but get
Right.
working.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I work with my infielders, because that's who I work with the most. I really put them on different angles. I go over the top 3/4 sidearm, which people think sidearm is like leaving the chest out this way and just dragging the arm, but it's really matching every different angles. Like I make them throw on the run this way, on the run this way. Like I switch it all up because, like you said, it gets pretty boring sometimes just doing the whole. But what I don't want them to do is just spend so much time getting loose instead of just learning how to get ready.
Right.
But when it comes to the intensity of the throws, should they be going 100% or should they just kind of depend on the day?
I would take their time to get out to 90, and then I would come in at the end when you're fully warm. I would throw a few, maybe 10, 15, kind of hard. Use your legs, like a step behind or a shuffle, where I'm getting my body in between, and I would try to put it as on a line as possible. Because you're gonna make those big throws, those backhands. You're gonna throw that ball really, really hard.
Right.
So I do 10 to 15, and that's gonna help a lot.
Okay. Now the last thing here, I wanted to ask you 4 fun questions real quick, but before we get there, when it comes to, because I talk a lot about pulling back as an infielder. It's kind of hard to see here, but I know what I'm talking about. But is the throw motion a whole lot different than the pitcher, or do you pretty much end up almost in the same spot?
I would say it's very, very similar. I mean, like, very similar. If it's a typical backhand throw, or on, like, where I'm catching it center of my body and coming up, it's a very similar throw. I'll give you an example. So I had Devin Marrero as my shortstop at ASU. And funny story about him was, he's like, "Gomez, anything up the middle is my ball." I was like, "All right, well, this makes it easy for me. I'll just pitch then."
Yeah, yeah.
So, but we were all like, "Hey, how hard do you think you could throw off the mound?" And he's like, "I throw like 96." And we're like, "BS, man, BS." So he just like goes like this, warms his arm up, and then first throw off the mound was 96 miles an hour. He threw over 100 miles an hour across the diamond. So
wow.
His arm, and especially in the last 10, 12 years, the arm paths have gotten a lot smaller. They're not as long. I know before, like, everyone was teaching long arms, but ultimately the speeds are going up because the arm is in such a quick path, and bodies are being used a lot more. And so I would say they're more similar today than they were in the past. And it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just an athletic throw,
Right.
Usually your shortstop could be your best pitcher. Your center fielder could probably be your best pitcher. That's why a lot of those outfielders, when they stop hitting, right, they transition into throwing.
Right. It's a good point. Well, I want to wrap it up here real quick with 4 fun questions here. So,
Yeah.
now, out of all the years that you've worked with kids, who do you think is your, well, I shouldn't say who. Like, what's your favorite player to work with? You don't have to say names. I just want to know.
I would say, the kids who are there to learn. You know what I mean? And it's not necessarily the youth kid. It's not necessarily the kid who isn't that great. It's the kid who's really good, but really wants to get better. So a good example, Jacob Berry. I don't know if you remember Jacob Berry, but he just signed, I think, last year for $6 million. So story about him. He's funny, awesome kid from Queen Creek. He came to me junior year and was like, hey, I want to throw 90 miles an hour across the diamond. And I was like, all right, well, that's a really specific goal. Okay, we can do that. He came in once a week for 4 weeks and got to his goal in a month. I think he started out at 85, and in a month he went up to 90 miles an hour, shook my hand, and then I never saw him again. Went to U of A. But that's a kid who doesn't necessarily need to improve, but continued to improve like beyond his years is amazing. And went to LSU. I think he was like the Golden Spikes Award nominee, and then ended up getting signed for that's the kid who just works, just straight up on every part of the game: the throwing, the fielding, the hitting, the running. I mean, he just an all around amazing player. And that's the kid. That's who we want to emulate, is kids who just work.
Right. What about your least favorite player?
Ooh, least favorite player. When they start, the emotions. I think the emotions where they're hard on themselves. Not like I'm not patient. I am patient. Not with my kid, not with my own kids, but everyone else's kids I'm very, very patient with. But I think teaching the emotional game of baseball, that is tiresome because the game is hard.
Right.
I mean, it is so when you react emotionally all the time to negativity or failure, like this game is all failure.
Right.
It's frustrating. So you can't really take things too seriously. Your highs can't be too high. Your lows can't be too low. And you got to kind of stay even keel. That's why I think a lot of baseball players are awesome. They're just so fun to hang out with because life's easy. Baseball's harder.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, what about your favorite team that you've played for? Like again, you don't have to say names, but like, why was it your favorite team that year?
I would say my college team that really pushed me. I didn't necessarily get the most innings. I didn't necessarily do the most for the team, but everybody was all in. And I really gained a lot from the perspective changes of like, this isn't about you. It's about us. It's about the team. It's about what we can do. And I loved it. I loved the mindset changes. I loved the aggressiveness. I loved, if you're gonna take one bag, you take two. Like we put a steal sign down, they'd run to third. I mean, not even go, like they'd go to second, but they just keep going, and we would outrun everyone, and it was just fun to play. Like that was fun to watch, fun to be a part of. Everything was just pushed. Everything was to the limit.
Right.
And that's how I want to coach. That's how I want my players to play. I just want them to go hard. And that's what you see in the Dominican. It's back to the Dominican, but man, they're teaching the game in such an amazing way. And it's fun to watch.
Yeah, everything is a dance. Everything is singing. Everything.
It's a blast. We need that. We'd sell more tickets here in the United States if there was more fun.
Yeah. Now, the last one here to wrap it up. What's your biggest pet peeve as a coach?
Probably not giving yourself the benefit of the doubt and just kind of quitting on yourself. I don't like quitting. It's going to be a process. You're never going to be finished. You'll never arrive. And so when kids quit really early, I see that with my own son, and I'm teaching him that. I know he's young. I know he's 7, but I'm teaching him how to work and how to push through things, and how if today's not the best day, it's okay. I'm just going to do my best that I can that day, and then tomorrow will be a new day. So probably giving up. I don't like that.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. Well, Agent, man, this was awesome information. I know a lot of parents and players and coaches out there will benefit from this. Where can we find you?
So on Instagram or Facebook, 212athlete.com as well. I don't use that website that much, but Instagram and Facebook I'm on mostly, and constantly posting new stuff. So
yeah, I highly recommend checking out his Facebook and Instagram because he posts a lot of great stuff there. And obviously, I've learned a bunch myself. So, Adrian, I really appreciate you again, man, for being on today. And and if you guys are watching this on YouTube, I'm gonna leave all the links below so you can go follow Adrian. And please like, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and remember, keep it Moy Style.
Hey guys, Moy Style Baseball here. If you're interested in having me come out to your city for a fielding camp or a hitting camp, or if you're in the Oklahoma area and you're looking for private lessons or group lessons, you can shoot me a text at 251-509-3815. You can also email me at moystyle33@gmail.com. Keep it Moy Style.